Surprise, I'm working on Slaanesh today. I bet you didn't see that coming. I already have a lot of Slaanesh models on the back burner that I kitbashed a long time ago, but I never painted. I've been kind of neglecting them because I've been waffling on their backstory for years, but I was actually kind of shamed into working on Slaanesh. My friend Adristea sent me a sick model that she kitbashed for the Slaanesh wing of my army, and I can't just leave him unpainted. Also, a local friend of mine gave me these awesome Oldhammer Slaanesh champions, so I think the universe is trying to tell me something. So today I'm working on my Slaanesh paint scheme. By the way, Adri also has a video showing off her kitbashing process on this guy, so be sure to check the link in the description to watch her video. But yeah, so here's the model she made for me. It's a Chaos Lord on Demonic Mount with the mark of Slaanesh. I think she absolutely nailed the aesthetic of my Slaanesh army, and I'm really excited to work on this dude. So if you're new around here, I'm working on a big army project where I'm kitbashing all of my favorite units from the Warriors of Chaos army book for all 5 marks of chaos. So my Nurgle units are all corrupted Bretonnians, my Khorne units are fallen Knights of the White Wolf, my Tzeentch units are still kind of top secret, I'm working on them right now, and my Slaanesh units are completely undeveloped. I have almost no story for them at all, which is why I haven't been working on them as much. Not because I'm bummed out on them or anything, but because if they don't have a story, then there are no constraints, and I have too many options. But when Adri reached out to ask questions about the vibes of the army, I realized I do actually have enough to go on after all, so that really got me inspired. So just a quick refresher on what I've got so far for Slaanesh. The first models I made for them were these warriors right here. These were all kitbashed using Stormcast Vanguard Hunters with an assortment of exotic weapons, mostly from Hedonites of Slaanesh. Their heads come from Khorne Blood Reavers, and I tried to mostly pick heads that don't have horns. They ended up with a sort of gladiatorial vibe to them, so I kitbashed up this guy as their demon prince. But he's not getting painted right now because I still have to work out his weapons, so stay tuned for his video. I picture these guys coming from someplace east of the old world. My first instinct is that they could be pit fighters from Araby, like gladiators, but the official Hedonite models have a Middle Eastern feel, so I was kind of shying away from that. But if it fits, it fits. There are other options for their homeland though. They could be from Ind, which is like fantasy India. And another option is they could be from the hinterlands of Koresh, which is like the fantasy equivalent of Southeast Asia. Not much is written about that area, which allows for a lot of freedom, but I'm pretty sure it's a lush jungle, which is not really what I wanted to work on. I really had my heart set on making their armor glossy black with yellow sand in the deep recesses to provide definition. So I think I'm sticking with Araby, but leave a comment if you have any cool ideas for them. That said, Slaanesh traditionally has a wide variety of styles, and while I was gathering references, I fell in love with a few of them, which I categorized here on my PureRef board. So on one end of the spectrum, you got what I'm calling the Hellraiser style, which is just utter darkness in terms of the color palette and the subject matter. And as I'm recording this, I can't remember who painted these ones, but I'll put their name up on the screen. So this was my original plan for my Slaanesh units, but then way over on the other end of the Slaanesh spectrum, you have these insanely colorful clashing palettes. And no one does this style better than Art of Dwayne over on Instagram. You don't really see Slaanesh represented this way on the tabletop or in the art very often, but if you read the books, Slaanesh regiments are usually described as being a riot of colors. No two warriors have the same silhouette, and there's no standardized gear, and their mutations are all wild and random. Even Emperor's Children in 40k are described in the books as being hard to look at because their armor is just so insane that it causes a migraine or something. But in the art, they're just purple. I love this look, and I'm tempted to do it. But I really had my heart set on greasy black armor. Maybe I'll save this riot of color style for my chosen units. But I was so inspired that I compiled a third category, and that's dark and gritty, but with vibrant accent colors. This is a mix between the black metal Slaanesh warriors on one end and the glam hair metal guys on the other. Basically, it's Kiss. And I'm not really sure yet, but I'm kind of leaning towards this style now. By the way, the artist that does this style best, in my opinion, is Path of Paint over on Instagram. Definitely check out his link in the description. Every single one of his Slaanesh Marines is a masterpiece of kitbashing, sculpting, and painting. And I also want to shout out my buddy Bitterlake, who also makes really cool dark but vibrant Slaanesh warriors. Anyway, that's the entire backstory that I have for Slaanesh and the entire thought process so far for them. But enough messing around, let's paint. So since these guys are going to be in a sandy environment, I sculpted some sand piles on the base that Adri sent me for the demonic mount. And here's what he looks like all put together. I kept him unglued though for now because I feel like that'll give me an easier time when I'm painting him. After priming them all black with the airbrush, I brushed on a coat of glossy black. I don't know why, but I really just have a strong vision of them being incredibly dark and incredibly shiny. And then since it's kind of impossible to highlight and shade glossy black, I'd create definition by dulling the shine in the recesses and choking the details with sand. And that's my plan anyway. For the second guy, I experimented with mixing a little bit of gloss varnish in with the already glossy paint. And it's hard to see under my diffuse lighting, but the one on the left did turn out a lot shinier. So I did the same thing for the rest of the unit. Now, I've never painted a miniature like this before, creating definition by varying the glossiness of the surface. But it's something we do when we're texturing 3D models, so I'm just hoping that it translates to physical 28mm miniatures as well. Next, I painted up the steel metallic bits, mostly the weapons and chains. For the trim though, I mixed up steel and gold 50-50 to create a pale gold or a warm steel. I don't really want to go full gold because I don't want them to resemble Black Legion, and I just thought this would look nice against the black armor plates. After that, I based the furs in white, and I can't really think of any desert creatures with white fur, maybe some sort of goat. But again, I just thought it would look really nice against the black, gold, and purple. And Adri made a good point that they're from the desert, but they're currently in Norska, or the Chaos Wastes, meeting up with my main army, so it would make sense that they would collect some furs. Now here's where I started experimenting and going off of my planned color scheme. Because remember, I originally envisioned them being like Cenobites from Hellraiser. Black armor, black steel, black leather, black on black on black. And the definition would come from the surface finish. But seeing these bright, colorful versions of Slaanesh made me want to introduce a little hint of that glam metal Slaanesh from the 80s. So on one guy, I painted a single knee pad pink and added black flames. I'll wait and see how I feel about this as the rest of the paint scheme develops. Maybe I'll do this on all the rest of the guys, but it's really easy to cover up with a layer of glossy black if I change my mind. Moving on though, I did decide that I definitely want their cloth and leather to be dyed purple. While painting up my Chaos Lord on Dragon in a previous video, I discovered a really cool recipe for purple stuff when I painted his cloak. I used that recipe again on my Tzeentch Knights, and I think it'll go perfect here as well since purple is officially Slaanesh's color. So I start with a royal purple base coat, and then I wash it with Druchii Violet, and then I re-highlight the high surfaces with the original royal purple. Next, the secret weapon. I highlight again with this really vibrant magenta. I wouldn't exactly call it highlighting since it's not that much brighter than the royal purple, but I just paint it in the same places where you would normally paint to highlight. It's a very transparent paint though, so it blends really well. It's just super glossy so it doesn't look like it's blending on camera, but when I knock back the shine, it'll look good, I promise. The next step was to take some Nuln Oil and wash the white fur to add definition. I also applied the Nuln Oil to the bottoms of all the purple cloaks because I really want them to fade almost down to black. And then I also applied a little bit of Nuln Oil to the recesses of the black armor to knock back the shine in the deep creases and help separate the plates. And while that dried, I worked on the bone parts. Nothing special here, just a bunch of different tans with an off-white highlight and Agrax Earthshade in the recesses. Pretty basic. For the skin, I had a few options. I could have gone with a pale purple gray. A lot of official Slaanesh paint schemes use that recipe, but I didn't want to make them look too monochromatic with all the other purple and pink accents. Since they're from Araby, I could have given them a darker olive skin tone, but I really wanted the skin to pop like crazy against the black, so I experimented with an extremely pale off-white skin tone, but they look too dead. I really want my Slaanesh units to look full of life. Slaanesh worshippers love life, and all the experiences that come with it. So I ended up tinting their skin with contrast Guilliman flesh. After that, I shaded with the Carabag Crimson in the deepest recesses. I also like to use this along the borders where the armor meets the flesh. I don't know if that's realistic, but it looks good. Then I highlighted with Kislev flesh, and once that dried, I re-highlighted even more with an even brighter peachy skin tone. And now it's time to paint the lizard. And it was really hard to decide what to do with this guy. I was torn between making it an indigenous desert animal with warm colors, or using cool Slaanesh colors, making it a demonic mount. In the end, I went with Slaanesh colors, and I'm still not sure I made the right choice. You'll see what I mean. I was planning on copying this color scheme even though I knew I risked making the lizard too samey and monochromatic against the already purple and black warriors. But I started by dry brushing the skin with white. I tinted the recesses with a bluish wash to match the reference, but I think I went way too overboard with it. I ended up making the whole thing too cool overall. But I knew I could always just paint over my mistakes, so I pressed on to see where it would end up. I tinted the thin membranes with Carabag Crimson, which added a little bit of warmth back into it. And then I started tinting the extremities purple like in my reference. At this stage it was really starting to look like a slap chop paint job, and I'm kinda not the biggest fan of slap chop, so I started to get worried. No offense if you do like it, I've seen people use slap chop to create some really incredible results, but in general, it's just not for me, it's not my style. So I knew I'd have to put in a lot of work to push past this phase and get the model looking the way I want it to look. After adding some black to the limbs and the scales, I thought, okay, this is going to turn out. I'll be able to fix this. But not right now. Right now, I want to work on the black armor again. Because at this point, I was still unsure whether the ultra glossy black armor was going to work at all. The details tend to just fade away and disappear. So I had to start thinking about the sand weathering. I started by painting up the bases so that I could visualize the color against the black armor. I ended up going with desert yellow from Vallejo. I also lightly loaded a dry brush with paint and gently jammed it in around the feet and along the hems of their cloaks to create a dusty, dry, speckly effect. Before moving on, I took some time to clean up any areas where I got other colors on my black armor. That's one thing that's really nice about this recipe. I mean, assuming it ends up looking good in the end. But it's very forgiving. Since we're not doing edge highlights or volumetric highlights, it's really easy to touch up mistakes with glossy black. Now for the moment of truth, sand weathering. So I watered down that desert yellow, and then I just tapped it into the cracks and crevices and allowed it to flow in. If there was too much paint and not enough water, I just rinsed the brush and tapped in a drop or two of pure water to get it flowing again. But it really dulls down the shine. And knocking back the shine in the deepest cracks helps to separate the glossy plates and shows you where one begins and the other ends. For the metal bits, I did the same thing, but I mixed a blue-green verdigris instead of using the sand color. Off camera, I painted up the banner, and I had planned to do the same vibrant magenta as I did on their cloaks, but as I was painting the purple base coat, I remembered the pink accent plate, and I decided that I was going to add that little bit of glam rock. So I made the banner pink with black flames, and I figured maybe each of my Slaanesh units should be painted up very differently, as if they're each individual warbands, like soldiers of fortune, pirates, gladiators, slave soldiers pressed into service, and they're all mashed into an army together. Maybe this recipe, the black armor with the single random plate picked out in pink and black flames, is the heraldry for just this one regiment. Maybe the next regiment will be gold or chrome or a bunch of insane colors. And that's how I could achieve the wild, incongruous look for my Slaanesh army. In a way, I'm kind of glad I was so indecisive about the look and the lore for my Slaanesh units, because if I had jumped in right away with my first idea, I wouldn't have thought of this. And now I'm thinking back to when I first started working on my Nurgle Bretonnians. Now, at this point, I have multiple named characters for them, and a 3-part short story to describe how they became corrupted. But I have to remind myself that I didn't write all that by sitting down and thinking about it. The story came to me as I worked. And the same will happen with my Slaanesh units and my Tzeentch units if I just do the work. That said, man, I really don't like how I painted this lizard. I probably should have gone with a warm tone. So, let's start all over. Blank slate. Paint it black. Or wait. Just putting black over top of the hips and the shoulders makes it look so much better. I think that's all it needed. There was just way too much of the white skin showing through. Alright, yeah. It's good now. Okay, so here are the finished results. I had a ton of fun on this project, and I want to thank Adristea for pushing me by sending me this awesome kit bash. You absolutely nailed the aesthetic of my Slaanesh army. Everyone, go watch her video to see her kit bashing process on this Chaos Lord. And stay tuned because I already have more Slaanesh units ready to paint. In fact, my very first video on this channel was kitbashing some Slaanesh knights. So go check that out if you want to see that process. I've also got this demon prince that I need to finish, and a snake sorcerer who does look like he could be from the hinterlands of Koresh after all. I've also finally got some lore cooking in my head for these guys. In fact, one of you sent me a really awesome suggestion through the contact form on my Big Cartel of all places. So if that was you, just know that I did get your email and I love your idea, and I'm going to mull it over and see if it fits with what I'm already planning. But that's for another video. Check the description for the links to all the other artists that I mentioned in this video. You can also find the link to my Discord down there, as well as my Instagram. I post all of my works in progress on Instagram long before these videos come out. And finally, I've got to thank my patrons. So I announced in my previous video that I started a Patreon, but that you don't get anything at all for signing up. Because I don't like the idea of putting my work behind a paywall, so everything I do will always be free. But some of you decided to support me anyway, and I'm extremely grateful for that. So, thank you to Guy T, Ralston, Adam J, Callum M, David E, Perp, Malseeth, Squiss, Nicholas P, Dave, and lastly to Michael E and B-Dog, who are both exalted champions. Holy cow, you guys, thank you. Alright, and now I'm an exhausted champion, so I'm out of here. Like and subscribe, thanks for watching.